Hello, everyone. My name is Angelica Melendez, and I'm current past chair of the NACAC Board and current chair of the Nominating Committee. I want to introduce you to our panelists today, who are all serving on the NACAC Nominating Committee. Courtney, Kristen Dickerson, Veronica Peña, and former board member Eddie Pickett. We're going to talk about a few things about wanting to become a board member in the application process. So we're going to talk about the positions available this cycle, the eligibility requirements, the skills that we're looking for in board directors and chairs, the applications process itself, and things to consider if you want to submit your name for board service. So first thing first, I'm going to turn this over to Kristen, and I'm going to ask you a quick little question. What are the positions available this year for board service?
So currently we have 4 available board positions. We have a chair-elect position, and we have 3 director positions. Both, or I guess all 4 of those positions are 3-year terms. And then the chair-elect is a 3-year term where it's a chair-elect, a chair, and a past chair. When you are the past chair of the chair position, you are also the chair of the nominating committee. And then the director terms are just 3 years straight through.
Wonderful, thank you. So now we're going to talk to Eddie. You know, you've been on the board, you did your 3-year cycle. What are some of the key characteristics that as the nominating committee we're looking for board directors and chair? And are there different requirements for chair and director candidates?
Yeah, I can answer that. I think for both of the roles, the 2 big pieces are that you have a commitment to NACAC's mission of empowering professionals in the field and to the vision to make post-secondary education accessible to all. Also, just the ability to check your bias at the door. We all have biases, whether positive or negative. We want to be able to walk into the room and try to remove that bias, at least recognize that we have it. So that's for both positions. For the board director candidates, we're thinking about what professional experience that you're bringing into the room that's taught you both hard and soft skills. How have you engaged in both in volunteer opportunities inside and outside of your office? And also the ability just to think long-term about the association and its impact on the field. So that's for the board director positions. As we move to the board chair position, all of the above still applies, but we want to see more evidence of these 3 areas. You know, how have you proven your leadership experience both inside and outside of your office? While you might not have experience with all the skills and knowledge in the middle here, you will be asked to do some piece of every one of those. And so how do you lean into these different things, and how have you proven that you've done that? And I think the most important 3 things I would say is to have an optimistic outlook, to have an emphasis on transparency, and to have a moral and ethical code that can continue to move the association forward. I think the big differences with the positions are also the time commitment, which we'll talk about a little later. But the experience coming is that we're going to expect more experience from the person running for board chair, and particularly in leadership roles.
Perfect, thank you. And I couldn't agree with you more, having gone through the cycle as well and then coming into this chair position. So Michael, I want to talk to you a little bit. Is there a difference if are you required to have prior affiliate leadership or NACAC SIG leadership or any type of leadership role before applying for board candidacy?
So serving as an affiliate leader or a NACAC committee member, chair, or SIG leader isn't required. It is helpful to show a natural progression of volunteer involvement and leadership within the affiliate and NACAC, and that will help better prepare the candidate for board service. So examples of things could be a chair of a NACAC special or ad hoc committee, affiliate president, SIG leader, or co-leader for sure. But there are other things that people could be doing with other organizations that have to do with college admission counseling that can be helpful to be a potential chair or a director.
Wonderful. Eddie, I know you had a different experience getting into the board director. So can you talk about how your professional experience prepared you to sit at the table of board directors?
Yeah, I think so. I never sat and did anything with our affiliates. I, attended a conference or a workshop or presented at something in that space, but I never did anything with the affiliates. For me, I was a faculty member for GWI for 4 years. And so 2 years in person and 2 years during COVID pandemic, which was fascinating. And then work-wise, I'd say like I'd worked at 2 CBOs at that point. I worked in admissions, left as a director of diversity recruitment, and I was at high school as a dean and college counselor at that time. For me, just thinking about all the different sides of the desk, that perspective I was bringing, and also just like personal background, how I grew up, I brought a little bit of a different personal background to this field. And so for all of you who are thinking like, am I ready? I didn't think I was ready. I got a bunch of calls and kept saying no. But you never know when it's your time. And so if you're, on that fence, it's not going to hurt you to put your name in. Closed mouth doesn't get fed. So if you don't put your name in, or you don't at least start asking the questions, you'll never know the answers.
Thank you. I see you threw in your key little quote that you always throw in at the end there. So thank you for that. So Veronica, just want to talk to you about, are there any expectations that all board candidates should consider when they're putting their name forward? And if someone's considering applying for chair or director, what are some of the expectations that they should have?
Yes, thank you so much. So yes, all candidates, regardless of the position being sought, should demonstrate a commitment to NACAC's mission and values, especially within diversity, equity, inclusion, justice, and belonging. They should also recognize that the NACAC board is apolitical and board members cannot bring their personal agenda to the table, kind of like what Eddie mentioned earlier, leaving the biases at the door. And all board members must be willing to provide a fair and unbiased perspective and have that ability to engage in difficult conversations and make some very difficult decisions.
All right, thank you. Eddie, other than some of the expectations that were already mentioned, what are some of the other desired skills and experiences that would make one of our members good for board service?
Yeah, there are a ton of them, as you can see by the slide here. You don't need to have experience with every single one of these. Like, that is a perfect human, and perfect humans don't really exist. However, think about, what areas do you have depth in? Maybe it's governance, maybe it's, fiscal planning and finance, maybe it's fundraising, it's policy, it's training people. So what areas do you have experience in, both professionally, volunteer, but also in your personal life? How are you going to bring those to the board? Your interest areas, for your current job aren't always, your strongest skill set, but maybe you have a different skill set that you can bring. And so we want you to be able to highlight those different skills that you're going to be able to bring to the NACAC board.
Perfect. Thank you. So we kind of talked about a few things here, but Kristen, my question to you is, do you need to know somebody on the nominating committee or NACAC leadership to consider putting your name in for board service?
You do not. And one of my new favorite terms has been, you do not need to be NACAC famous to apply for these positions, right? If you have a great resume, you're interested, and you meet the qualifications, you should apply and allow your resume to speak for itself. I think when I went through the applications last year, it was fascinating to read resumes of people that I didn't know that their expertise just jumped off of the paper. And I thought, yeah, this person would be a great addition to the team. So I would encourage people to still look into that and let their resume speak for them.
Awesome. Thank you. So now we kind of talked about a few things here, but now we're going to talk about the application process itself and like tips for applying. So Veronica, can you tell me what documents are required for candidates to submit, and when does the application process close for consideration?
Yes, so there is an application, a bio form. We ask for you to submit your resume, as well as a reference form. The application is going to ask you very general information, your name, contact information, but it's also going to ask you for a reference that we prefer you to write down somebody who is somewhat familiar with NACAC. We do ask that current NACAC board members and direct reports of applicants do not serve as a reference. We also ask for your supervisor information in case you do advance to the interview round. That bio form, we're going to ask you some very generalized questions and want some short responses. We really just want to get to know a little bit more about you and how your growth, you see that in the NACAC board, and kind of what you want to bring to the table to the NACAC board. And then we're also going to give you a space to talk about some of the awards, any podcasts, presentations, or maybe publications you might have received or took part in. And then, of course, that resume or CV. We, like Kristen just said, we want to see it all there. And so you have an opportunity to really talk about your experiences, what you have done, and kind of what you want to lead into. And overall, we just want to hear from you. And that deadline for all of those documents is going to be February 28th.
And there's also an institutional support form that is due on March 18th. So only those who advance to the interview round are required to submit this form. It's basically getting clearance from your supervisor that they're okay with you being put in this pool. And it is a very big commitment to be a chair or a director. So you want to make sure that your supervisor's on board and they're aligned with the mission of the organization and the work that you're going to do. There's some financial component, but also it's really time.
Yeah, time is a finite thing. I think in working with any office, they have to know that you're going to be required to show up to NACAC events. Not all, but there are 3 times a year where we're going to meet in person. It's usually a retreat, which is and sometime in the winter. There's a May meeting at national headquarters in Virginia, and then the national conference as well. And those are the times you're meeting in person. There's also times you're going to be meeting virtually, and those are usually the committees. And so whether it's the finance committee or the strategy committee, you're going to be meeting with those roughly monthly. And so each person has a little bit of a different time commitment. And so understanding for your office to understand that, you are going to have some time at work that you're going to be working on NACAC pieces. And so that's important for the institutional commitment piece.
And then I'll just chime in as far as the chair commitment. Definitely you're going to all those retreats. You're at the committee meetings. There's also an executive committee meeting where it's the 3 chairs, the chair of the strategy and finance committee meetings are also there, and our APC coordinator are all part of that with our CEO. And there's some individual one-on-one conversations that the chair will have with the CEO. And then there's just the chair's call with the chairs and our NACAC CEO. So there are a lot of meetings, and working in a public high school, it is possible for you to do this board director service or chair service. I have my NACAC days, and those are the days I just block off, and that's the days I focus on that. And that's when I have community partners here at my school where they can manage the traffic of the students. And those 2 to 3 hours that I block off, I work on it. And if I get done earlier, then I can come back and help my students. So it is definitely manageable. It is doable. And we definitely would encourage all of our members who feel that they have the resume and the talents and the characteristics that we're looking for to put your name in for board service.
Can I add on there too? Just as a person who watched Angelica both as a board chair or board director and as a board chair, I can say that she was always present. Sometimes people say, I don't have the time or my office won't let me go. Angelica does work in a public high school, and I can say she was present for all of those things and always there and willing to be a great chair, but also a great member. So just want to throw that in there.
You're too kind as always. So we're going to talk more about the application process. What is the nominating committee looking for in the applicant's response to how their experience has prepared them to serve as an effective member, or why they're interested in serving? Veronica, would you like to go first?
Yes. So I would really say be yourself, showcase what you've accomplished and how that translates to board service. If you have any specialized skills or knowledge that might not be directly related to within admissions or college counseling, share it. Example, maybe you're really great at writing and proposing grants. Share that on your application. All board members are bringing different skill sets to the table, and we want to see how yours might make an impact on our organization and where we want to go. And then also being aware of current trends in the industry, kind of any challenges that we might be facing. We're not expecting you to showcase how we're going to fix it on that application of yours, but we want you to be aware of what our members are going through.
Yeah, and
in our
as
committee.
a past board member, they're both current and past board members on the nominating committee, and that's on purpose. I think something that we're looking for is just we're looking for thought leaders. It's people who are great advisors and some folks with a philosophical approach to this work. As a supervisor currently, I can tell you what to do if you report to me. As a board director, you're in the governance, and I can't actually tell you what to do. It's our job to set good precedent and to pull people in to say, hey, here's what we're needing in this profession to move us forward.
Perfect. Thank you. So we talked about what we're looking for when the applicants submit their information. But Michael, can you talk about what makes someone a good reference, or what is the nominating committee looking for in the recommendation of a candidate?
Sure. So the reference is actually a really exciting part for us to read when we review the entire application. We've seen a lot of things in the candidate's voice, but then seeing someone who knows them really well as an objective party is really great to read. I would say that the reference is someone who typically might know something about NACAC and understands the work that you do on an intimate level connecting to our organization. If the reference can talk about some of the desired skills or experience of the NACAC board members, advocacy, fundraising, media relations, strategic planning, things like that, that can also be really helpful in getting to know the candidate as being a good match for the board.
Thank you. Okay, so we talked about the applicant submitting their stuff. Now we're got the recommendation. So Kristen, can you talk about, for those who advance to the interview round, what is the purpose, the format of the interviews?
Absolutely. So if you do make it onto the interview round, you will be invited to participate in an interview in mid-March. So sometime between March 10th and the 20th. Each interview is about 30 minutes long, with a panel of folks from our from our nominations committee. We'll ask questions around your college admission experience, NACAC experience, committee and affiliate experience, your reasons for wanting to be on the board. Overall, even though it may seem a little intimidating to be interviewing with maybe 4, 5, 6 people, there are no trick questions. And we really just genuinely want to take the time to see if you're going to be a good fit for the team. And I would just encourage people in those interviews, if you're invited to an interview, just be yourself, and take the time to A, let us get to know you, but B, this is time for you as the interviewer to make sure this is a good fit for you as well. So really take that time. And again, we're not here to be scary or ask trick questions or anything. So that's about what you should expect.
So I'm going to ask the 3 of you who were on the nominating committee last year, what typically differentiates a candidate who advances to the interview phase and ultimately slated from someone who doesn't? So on my screen, I have Michael, Kristen, and Veronica. So we'll go in that order if you don't mind.
Sure. It's really hard. I got to say it. There are really qualified candidates who don't advance, and it's obviously never personal. And we hope that person might consider running again in the future. I would say that we have really structured and impressive debates about the candidates who are able to advance. When someone advances, we definitely see significant experience and leadership and a real alignment with the mission of the organization and a real understanding of all the different nuances of NACAC. The person who advances is someone who we think inspires confidence in other people. And the person who advances is someone who can write well, someone who can advocate for themselves, someone who has a real interest in seeing the future of the profession and can almost envision what are the next issues coming up. We always see every year different issues that were unexpected, but when a candidate advances, they really have a good sense of not just predicting the future, but really understanding the nuances of our profession and things that will come up down the line.
I would say, I'm going to echo that it was very hard to make a decision with the people that we had to choose from. I think ultimately the folks that were moving on to the next round, we had a screen a couple of slides ago that had all of the different boxes on it. And I feel like many of those people checked many of those boxes. They had leadership, they had communication skills, they had a passion for NACAC and what we do as an organization. And I think that tended to show, even if they weren't directly involved in NACAC, they still were sort of showing the mission and the drive and the understanding of what it really means to advocate for our students and advocate for our members.
Yes, and I will echo exactly what Kristen and Michael said. It's honestly a very tough decision to make when determining who moves forward. I would really just say be yourself, demonstrate the passion for the work we do, the advocacy that we do, and really showcase the talents and how that translates to board service and kind of the pathway of NACAC and what we do. And really just be yourself, and you're going to get nervous on it if you're interviewing. It's going to happen, but be yourself. And I would say apply whether you feel like you're going to get it or not. And if you don't get it, apply the following year, because you never know when it's going to be your time.
That's great advice. Thank you. So now, Eddie, when you were running, you had to take some things into consideration, but what are areas of consideration that a potential candidate should be thinking about as related to board service?
Yeah, I think there's 3 areas. So there's the time commitment, the role that you're playing, and so being a public figure, and then also understanding the actual work of the board. So the time commitment, I think, for me, the first 2 years as a board director actually wasn't a heavy lift, to be frank. And so, it was roughly once a month. There's a lot of reading before meetings, so you have to know that. But the 3rd year as the Finance and Audit Committee chair, that was a lot more work. And so you add the executive meetings in there. There's a lot of one-on-one meetings with NACAC executive staff and with the CEO. It's a lot of phone calls back and forth. And then as a chair, you have that plus the other committee plus the entire board. So there's more, even more commitment on top of that. So time is a real thing. I think in being a public figure, people are going to come out of the woodworks like, oh, you're on the NACAC board. Let me tell you about this. Let me tell you about that. And so knowing that people are going to approach you about things, but you're also, you represent yourself. You represent your organization or institution. You also represent NACAC and the NACAC board. And so, I heard recently on a podcast that, you're always interviewing, and same thing as a NACAC board member, you're always on the NACAC board. You're always, that representative of the organization. So you have to know that. And I think the 3rd piece is that this is very different than the affiliates. And so the affiliates, you're actually doing the work. NACAC has a staff. NACAC staff is doing the work. You are an advisor for the work. You are the governor of, like I was as a finance chair, was approving Angel's expenses. Never thought I'd be doing that. But you are the advisor to them. And so your job is to make sure that you understand all of those different pieces. I think most importantly is that you're going to be chosen to be a thought leader in the field and to be a great advisor. So all 3 of those things are things that to definitely consider as you're applying for these positions, both the chair and the board directors.
You hit the nail right on the head, as always, Mr. Pickett. Love it. Well, that concludes kind of our webinar, but I just want to wrap up some important dates that are coming up in the application process itself. Don't forget your application, your biographical form and reference form are due by 5 p.m. Eastern time on February 28th. Then between March 10th and March 20th, those candidates selected for interviews will participate in the interviews. The institutional support form will be required for those candidates who moved on to the interviews by March 20th at 5 p.m. as well. And then sometime in early April, we will announce the slate of nominees and start the process of notifying our members of who's up for elections. Any last minute thoughts or comments from our committee members?
We're rooting for you. So we're rooting for you.
All right, we'll have a couple more board webinars. The next one will be Revelations and Insights, My NACAC Board Experience. I will be moderating that as well. And we have 5 board directors that will be us panelists. And then shortly after that, our CEO, Angel Perez, will be doing a webinar about tomorrow's NACAC and what the future holds for our association. So thank you all for viewing, and I appreciate your time, and hopefully we'll see your application soon. Thank you, everyone.